how you set up your day, checking in with yourself first, meditating, moving your body, basically filling yourself up. The most important thing to Annie Mayfield is checking in on her heart, her spirit, her soul, her body. That is the most important thing every single day. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. It is a necessity.
Hi, my name is Pernilla, and this is my Challenge Your Norm podcast. I'm absolutely obsessed with anything related to personal development. And well, to grow, we got to challenge our norm. And so on this podcast, we chat about life and how we can challenge our normal way of living it to make it greater than we could have ever imagined. Just one little belief, habit, bold move, and perspective at a time. Today, I sit down with Annie Mayfield, who is not just a 4 times published author, 2 times Amazon bestseller, and runs a global nutrition organization. She uses her life every day to help women with their health and finances and faith. And today, during our conversation, she blew my mind so many times and just fired wisdom bombs in a way that I could really relate and use everything that she shared in my own life. I believe that when you listen to this, you're going to have a ton of wake-up calls, both when it comes to taking action on your deepest desires, but also when it comes to really taking care of yourself. And she gives very great tools in how to structure our day and different exercises that we can put to use in our daily life in order to set ourselves up for feeling at our absolute best. And by doing that, also be able to impact other people's lives in the best way possible. I am so excited for you to listen to this, and I hope it blows your mind like it did mine. Annie, I am so excited to chat with you today. You are just a beautiful soul with so much value, so much empowerment to women, lifting us all up. And I'm just so excited to dig into your brain today because you have published books, you have launched different programs, and just built a business that has such a massive influence in so many people's lives. And I know that deep down, a lot of us dream to one day create that for ourselves. You have such vibrant energy and confident energy about you. And I would love to start off with just asking you, like, how did this start? How did you become who you are today?
Oh my gosh, what a good question. Well, first, Pernilla, I'm honored to be on. You are someone that inspires me so much. So it is a treat and a pleasure to be on Challenge Your Norm today. Honestly, gosh, where did this start? So I always like to say, because I know we live in a world that everything is Instagrammable and filtered, and it seems like things just came out of the box perfect. I was a really shy kid. I was not very confident at all.
Wow.
And yeah, in middle school, I mean, was the girl that would be considered like mute. I barely spoke. I was insecure about how shy I was. And, you know, I guess through the years, what happened, I wish I could say it was something a little bit less practical than this, but I found a sport that I was really good at. I played college tennis, and that gave me a lot of confidence. That and mostly my faith. Like for me, it's always been the spirit in me gives me confidence. And when I know that it's not me, but like God that shows up, it kind of takes the pressure off. And that gives me a confidence that, you know, it translates, I think, what a typical 22, 23, 24-year-old would be able to do just on her own. That being said, in college, when I really got into my self-development is when the confidence got even greater. In my sophomore year, I was going through a really tough breakup. And if you would have asked 21-year-old Annie, he was definitely the one, right? That's what we always say. Well, I was in a really dark place after that. And I fell in love with self-development books. At that time, my anxiety was at an all-time high. I really threw myself into tennis and into fitness, but, you know, all the typical like vices to feel better, they just weren't working. And what I realized, it was because it was my mindset. I was taking care of my body. I was not taking care of my mind. And my first self-development book I ever read was You're a Badass by Jen Sincero. I don't know, have you read that one, Pernilla?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
I love it.
So good. And then, you know, what was so, and I know you've spoken to this before, what I loved about it was it just gave guidelines and solutions to what I thought were just natural problems. I always told myself, I'm just an anxious person. That's just how I am. I will just always be an insecure person. That's just how I am. And all of a sudden, it was just like this nice slap in the face. No, you can grow. You can work on yourself. There is not a ceiling to what and who you can be and how you can show up. It was from there, I think I read it was almost 100 books in between my sophomore and junior year. And Pernilla, I noticed there are no books written by women our age. They're typically written by women older. And I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, I wonder what kind of demographic or audience is not being talked to because they don't see themselves in the author of the book. And from there, I was not ready. I was not qualified by any means, but I was like, you know what? There is a need. I'm going to just show up, let God do what he needs to. And that's where my first book, Be Your Own Hero, was born. And from there, writing is very healing for me. It's always been very healing for me. And through that process of confronting my insecurities, hoping that will help other people do the same, I really found my voice. And from there, really connecting to my spirit, just kind of found my confidence.
Wow. Beautiful. We just spoke on your podcast and I shared them. For me, I really had such low self-esteem and didn't believe in myself. And that kind of was what made me I don't want to feel this way anymore. Was there any time in your life or any situation that was I want to break out of this thing and that is why I'm doing it? Or was it purely because, I want to make an impact in these younger women's lives?
I think so. To your question, it was this feeling of, I was tired of being so hard on myself all the time and I call it my inner bully voice. I don't know if other people have that. I think when you're an athlete, I used to think it was a good thing because it pushed me to work harder, but all of a sudden I couldn't turn it on and off. It was everything I did wasn't good enough for myself. Everything I did was falling short. Everything I did, it's I didn't look the right way. I didn't act the right way. I wasn't funny the right way. I wasn't smart the right way. And I think we live in a world that everyone's standard is perfection, which is so sad because that is the lowest standard because it doesn't exist. Tony Robbins says that. And I was definitely caught up in that cycle of just feeling this need to be perfect and show up as perfection. And I realized at a young age, if I kept doing this, I was just going to live a very miserable life because there was a standard I was reaching for that did not exist. And I don't think God wanted us down here living a miserable life. I think life is supposed to be beautiful and yes, hard, but simple. And I think hard and simple aren't opposites, right? And so to that, when I was at that place and I did the work myself, that's when I realized, okay, now that I've done the work and these wounds have become scars, I'm ready to speak from my scars to hopefully help someone else's wounds. And that was kind of the progression of going from working on myself to wanting it to impact other people.
I love that. If someone really resonates with everything you're sharing about the place you were in and having this negative self-talk and just not feeling like they want to feel, do you have any daily things, habits, tools that they can use to get closer to where you are today?
Yes. So I know we just talked about this too, our morning routines. So important. And I call it the monkey brain, right? So when we first wake up, my monkey brain is really loud. It's all these thoughts that are not true. I think sometimes we think everything we think is true. It's not. You get to choose what you believe is true and you get to choose the thoughts you hold on to. So right when I wake up, I think one of the best things I ever did was I kind of made an agreement with myself. Okay, Annie, right when we wake up, we're not going to trust every thought that goes into our head. Because I don't know, maybe you're not like me, but when I wake up, Pernilla, I have, oh gosh, I'm really worried about that today. I'm nervous about that today. I'm overwhelmed. And so I made an agreement with myself. I don't trust every thought I think when I first wake up. And after that, it's 15 minutes. It's a practice I've been doing, gosh, for almost 5 years now. But I basically, for 5 minutes, I read scripture. For me, like getting into the word is so important for me and just framing my mind. And then I go into what I call my 5 P to P. There are 5 pen to paper moments. And I spend 5 minutes writing. And it starts with, I am feeling, and I just let myself go. And I think checking in with yourself first thing is so important, because you realize like, oh yeah, I am feeling nervous about that today. Yeah, it is kind of touching on an insecurity I have that maybe I'm not good enough, but that's not true. So I can choose a more powerful thought here, and to be intentional with that. The first part of your day, for I know you're crazy like me, so this is at like 3:30 in the morning. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It allows me to go through the rest of the day being super aware, like, okay, I am feeling a little more nervous today than normal. I am feeling a little more insecure than normal. So when I have,
this is powerful.
yeah, so like, let's say, for a meeting that I have, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this meeting, I'm nervous for it. All of a sudden, those nerves, that onset, they're not a surprise. Like, I knew I was feeling nervous today about it. And I think sometimes what takes us out of the game with our emotions is the shock of them. It's like, wait, I'm angry, I'm mad, I'm nervous. But if you start your day being in tune with how you're feeling, when things come up, you take the shock out and you're actually able to address them with a level head. And so for anyone in your audience that suffers from insecurity or anxiety or things that I've gone through, being aware of that first thing has changed my life. It really has.
That is such a beautiful practice. I'm going to try that in my journaling. I always try to encourage people to journal. I'm such a fan. It really just does get you connected to yourself and the today I'm feeling, or right now I'm feeling, oh, that is beautiful. And setting the timer, oftentimes when we do practices like this, in the beginning, like, superficial things may come out, but the more we do it, the deeper it gets, right? And that's when we really get connected with ourselves.
So good. And to add to that about the timer, I remember in the beginning, I was like, oh, I feel like it's more spiritual if I don't set a timer. But what the timer does, Pernilla, is it forces you to go longer, because the good stuff comes when, you have that good amount of time standard set. I would also say that I think sometimes as a world, we live kind of paranoid. And I think it's because of social media. We always think people are watching us or watching what we're doing. And I think we journal like that. I think sometimes, at least I did, I journaled like, someone's going to read this later, so I need to make sure it sounds really good and I'm using good grammar. And my rule for journaling is, well, one, no one is ever allowed to read my journal, because for me, it's the mindset of no one's ever going to read this. So this is like, Annie, no bull crap. How are you feeling? Like, don't try to sugarcoat it. No one's going to read this. How are you feeling? And that's been life-changing for me, because if you start your day with honesty, then the fruit that comes from it for the rest of the day it's amazing. It's really powerful.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I hope people listening that you go back and just listen to that again. If you have not yet started journaling and paying attention to how you feel, it can really shift your life, because when you shift how you take care of yourself and your feelings, oh my gosh, it changes your life. So beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Oh, I love that. And that kind of leads us to talking about what that has led to in your career, because you have to take care of yourself first before you can really make an impact in the outer world too, right? If people, they're starting to take care of themselves more and they kind of want to maybe launch a book or launch a business or start public speaking, all of which you have been doing for a while and you built yourself. What can someone do to start? Because it feels overwhelming to even think about when you have no idea how to start.
That is so true. My rule of thumb for anything in life is simple scales, fancy fails. That's like my favorite saying ever.
Oh, that's
simple
good.
scales, fancy fails. So whenever you want to try something, whether you do want to write a book, like I get a lot of questions around, I want to write a book, where do I start? Or speaking, like I need to write a speech, where do I start? I always say the simpler the better. Like, let's not, I think sometimes we blow things up way in our minds to the point where we don't even do anything because we're so overwhelmed by all the stuff we think we have to do. And so It's the same thing with taking care of yourself. Like if you're someone that's never been to the gym, and I know you'd probably say this too, Pernilla, it's probably not great for you to start going to the gym 7 days a week for 2 hours a day. Like you need to start with maybe walking for 10 minutes 5 days a week, or something that's going to make you still be here 5 years later working out. It's the same thing with any sort of career. So I like to say, I call them my non-negotiables. Whenever I am undergoing a new business venture, or I am, I have a speech I have to write, or a new book that I'm writing, I'm like, okay, what are my non-negotiables? And what that means is, what are these simple things that are really going to drive the needle in this project that I can do every single day? And they're small. They're really small. So for like, if someone has a business where it requires finding new clients or finding new prospects, that would look like how many reach outs are you doing? How many follow-ups are you doing? And like make it small and do it 5 days a week. If you're wanting to write a book, like, okay, maybe Thursdays are your content creation days, creativity days. So on Thursdays, the first thing you're going to do is, okay, what is the book going to be about? Like, is it going to be a self-development book? Is it going to be a fiction book? Is it going to be a dystopian novel? Like, let's figure out what it's about. And then from there, let's get the idea for the first chapter. Like, let's not make it super complicated. And to that point, I think we just live in a world that likes to complicate things. And that's such a form of procrastination, because the more we complicate, the more we're putting on our plate to execute. And I think complication kills execution, right? It's like, if you want to get something done, I'm not saying don't do your best. I'm not saying don't try hard. What I am saying is set yourself up for success by identifying the simplest route you could go to do very well. And sometimes, Pernilla, I'm a big believer, and that looks like find the person that's done what you want to do and ask them what they did, because success leaves clues and you don't have to reinvent the wheelhouse. So if you want to be a YouTube influencer like Pernilla, go ask Pernilla how she grew her following to almost 100K in 2 years, right? Like if you want to ask how to be an author, go ask Annie what she did and then make it your own. But I think sometimes we just complicate the crap out of stuff. And I think it really is us just pushing off doing the thing because we're scared to do it.
Oh my gosh, Annie. That is so good.
That was so much.
So fire. I needed to hear this. I'm making shift within everything that I'm doing currently. And that coming back always to, how can I make this easy for myself? Like we want to make it hard and then we procrastinate. I think it's a human thing. And so that reminder for all of us, thank you.
Of course.
I'm so grateful for all the knowledge and tips you're sharing with us. I am very curious always about struggles on the journey, and you have shared a few with us, but I feel like struggles are what make us us, right? And sometimes when we're in the midst of it, we think we're alone, and we think that, the people like Annie who have already published her books and done public speaking and built her own business, she could just do it. She could just figure it out. Would you be willing to share either one or just like any struggling situations that you've had throughout your journey?
Oh my gosh, so many. So I'm like in my mind, like, which one do I choose? Because just to level set before I go into a couple, anything worth doing is worth struggling for. And anything worth doing, you're going to struggle. And I think that's a sign that you're on the path and the trajectory of growth. Because when you're growing, you are accumulating new characteristics and skills that you didn't have before, which means you're uncomfortable. And it's going to shine light on maybe some areas that you've been trying to keep hidden because they're not sexy. They're not cute. They're not perfected, right? And so I know something I've struggled with so much of my life is just imposter syndrome, in the sense that it's like, I'm young. Yeah, I am young. And so like having conversations with people older than me, business conversations, asking people for money that are older than me, networking with people older than me that have more experience than me. I think one of the biggest questions I got on interviews after I published my first book was like, what made you think you could do that at 21 years old? Where did that come from? How did you know? And that was something that I just, like I said, I attribute to the spirit, because I didn't know. And I just kind of went with it and I just showed up and let God do the rest. But, I don't think those fears ever go away. I think they get less noisy in the sense that, a lot of the insecurities we have, I think people give the advice of let's eliminate them, let's make them go away. And I think sometimes some of the insecurities we come in with, whether it's imposter syndrome, not feeling good enough, whatever it is, they don't ever really go away. They just get less loud. And the way to get them less loud is to give a microphone to the stronger voice in your mind, which speaks life over them. No, you are enough. No, you can do this. Yes, it doesn't make sense from the outside, but like God gave you that spirit to do it and to show up and to fulfill this purpose for you, right? And I think that's how I've overcome that. But it's really easy to look at someone and their success and think they have it all together and they never feel fear and they never feel insecure and they never feel not good enough. That's not the case for me. Maybe it is for some other author and speaker, but for me, like, it's an everyday intention of speaking life into myself. Like, I have a place here. I can do this. I'm meant to do this. And for some people, I think that's really going to help them because they've been counting themselves out of doing the thing they were made to do because they think that, oh, well, I don't feel good enough for it. That's okay. I don't either. And I'm doing it every day, right? So that's one. The other big one, Pernilla, is I have very much a lot of my life associated accomplishment with worth. The more I accomplish, the more worthy I am, the more valuable I am. And it just, I think it goes back to we do live in a world where we see people's success instantly. So we're all so hungry for, if you're a high achiever, naturally, it's like you want that next achievement, you want that next thing. And another intention that, again, I have to speak over myself every day is I don't have to work for worth. I can work from it. I don't have to work for love or for value. I can work from it. Like, I am already so loved, so valuable, so worthy. And any accomplishment, anything I do that's worth clapping for or whatever, that is in the overflow of the fact that I'm already as worthy as I'm ever going to be. So I don't have to write another book to feel more worthy or make another viral post to feel more worthy. It's like, I get to do those things from the overflow of the fact I already am all of that. And I am so loved and so valuable. And that's a lesson that I still have to work on. But when I got that realization, it was life-changing through these processes.
Because I think I myself struggle with that, and I know so many others do. Do you have any tools to how to connect with that worthiness now? How do people work with that on that?
Yes. So from a practical standpoint, I'll tell you what's really helped me make the transition is how I prioritize my day. In the sense that how I used to function was work would come first, like work was king. So in the mornings, like I always worked out first thing, but then I'd go straight to work. I didn't do quiet time. I didn't take time to journal. I didn't take time to check in with myself because whether I would say this out loud or not, I definitely considered myself a human doing, not a human being, right? It's like I do that. Even when you ask people, like, what's the first thing people ask people at parties, or it's, what do you do? What do you do? And it's because we live in this world that celebrates what people do, not who they are. And so if no one is going to prioritize who you are as a person, you've got to be the person that does. And so how you set up your day, checking in with yourself first, meditating, moving your body, basically filling yourself up. The first 3 hours of my day, I am not doing anything that's going to have a monetary ROI. I'm not, because what that does is it translates in my brain. The most important thing to Annie Mayfield is checking in on her heart, her spirit, her soul, her body. That is the most important thing every single day. And I know we were talking about nighttime routines on my podcast. I'm beginning to realize the importance of ending my day, prioritizing myself first as well, because that sends just this unconscious message to your brain like, oh yeah, this is the most important thing. Yes, work is important, but not as important as just taking care of yourself.
Annie, I could just listen to you all day. I can see why you've had so much success with everything that you do, because there's just so much light inside of you, and it's just beautiful. I'm gonna re-listen to this podcast episode again and again.
I'm gonna re-listen to the one you did with me. It's just so rich, so valuable.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And I just really want to thank you for showing up and going through that transformational life change that you've gone through throughout your since you started your self-development journey, because the work that you do today really helping change the planet and human people's lives. And that is just the most beautiful thing. And the fact that you're taking care of yourself first is the reason why you can. And I think that's such an important message that you share, that you cannot go out and do all these beautiful things unless you take care of yourself first. At least not in the most loving, it won't have the same frequency if you don't.
Or durability. One of my favorite images or pieces of imagery is like, imagine a vase and imagine all these cups around the vase. And, you know, the vase is filled with water and it pours and it pours and it pours into these cups. And eventually it's empty for itself. It doesn't have anything for itself. Now imagine another vase and a bunch of cups around it. And that vase has this ever-flowing source under it that's constantly feeding it water. Well, those other cups around it get fed, they get filled, but not at the expense.
Wow.
And with that overflow, it's never ending. So you can feed and serve and add value to so many more people when you are doing it from your overflow. And that's what, you know, to anyone listening to your content, I know there are probably people that have similar hearts and want to serve. I would say, taking care of yourself is not selfish. It is a necessity, because if you want your ministry, your service, your value to reach as many people as possible, you've got to take care of yourself first.
I love it. People that want to, I mean, everyone who's listened to this podcast who want to go follow you and learn more from you, where can they find you?
Yes, I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok, Annie B. Mayfield. On Facebook, Annie B. Mayfield. So, you know, maybe I'll start a YouTube channel soon. Maybe you'll inspire me. Put some of my speaking stuff on there. But yeah, Instagram is probably where I hang out the most. I'm definitely a story kind of girl. I love talking in my Instagram stories. So,
I love listening to your Instagram stories. I'll listen to your Instagram stories. And I really think that when you put that on YouTube, people, they're just going to love it. Yes, I do have a final question that I like to ask on this podcast, because the podcast is called Challenge Your Norm. And that's because I believe, you know, to grow, we got to challenge our norm. So if you had to give advice to someone to challenge their norm in a way that would positively affect their life, what would that be?
Don't knock the power of a small start. And what I mean by that is, when we're thinking, and kind of going back to what I was talking to, simple scales, fancy fails. I think when we want to make these, like, you know, 2023 goals, New Year's resolutions, people have these, I want to lose 100 pounds, or I'm going to start a brand new business. And all those things are great, but they're massive. They're massive. Let's, you know, instead of taking one-time big leap, don't knock the power of the accumulated volume of thousands of tiny steps added up. And so when you're trying to challenge yourself in some way, it doesn't have to be massive. Maybe tomorrow you run 2 minutes extra on the treadmill. Maybe you add a minute to your ice bath, or you ask that girl on a date or that guy on a date that you were scared to. I would say start small. Don't knock the power of small steps, and hold yourself accountable to doing one thing that scares you a day. That's changed my growth and challenged my norm.
Thank you, Annie. I appreciate you. I'm so honored that you came on this podcast. Thank you so
much for having me.
Thank you.